Hey guys, Phil again, welcome back to my garden. Today I'm going to start some new seeds for my fall harvest. And I'm getting attacked by a fly. So stay tuned. The first thing I want to talk about before starting planting my seeds is what can you grow in your garden for a fall harvest. Essentially, same thing you can plant in the summer. It just depends on if your plants are cold hardy and how long they take to be ready. Aside from that, you can plant pretty much whatever you want. You can plant cucumbers if you start them early enough, and if you get the smaller ones, they produce fast enough that you'll be able to get cucumbers before your first frost. Same thing with cherry tomatoes. They grow pretty fast, so you can plant some in the summer to get some in the fall. You have also other plants like kale that can survive frost really well. I've actually had plant of red Russian kale that survived the winter and grew back the next year. So those are very good to plant in the fall. Actually in the late summer to be ready for the fall. And right now, today, I'm going to plant more lettuce because lettuce is a cold weather vegetable, so they don't like the heat as much. And I'm starting them towards the end of July when things starts to cool down, so that they'll be ready around late August, maybe the early September or something like that, and they'll be good, well, pretty much until the first frost. Second thing I'll be planting is spinach, because the spinach that I have right now is the spinach from New Zealand. It's a bit different from what we're used to. I don't mind it too much, but I can't eat it raw, and that was sort of the point of getting spinach. I don't like spinach cooked as much. I like it better raw. And the one that I have has oxalic acid, so same thing you have in rhubarb leaves that make it that you can't eat it or it can be toxic for you. So for those spinach, I need to cook them in water and discard the water, which sort of defeats the point of having them. But anyway, I'll be planting different kinds of spinach for this season. I also started leeks that I'll be transferring once my potatoes are ready. So those should be ready for before the winter. Aside from that, I started a bit more of those collard greens, but they got eaten by bugs, so I'll have to restart some. Those are also cold hardy, same thing as kale. Okay, so before we start, I want to talk about what I'll be planting. I have these spinach. They're called Avon Hybrid. They look pretty good. They take about 53 days to be ready. Hopefully they'll work well. And just in case, I bought this other kind called Viking, which take about 50 days. Those come in those seed tape that I'm not very fond of, honestly. I prefer having loose seeds, but that's the only kind they had, so I went with that. Aside from that, I'm planting 3 kinds of lettuce again. So I have this Grand Rapids that I've already planted in my garden that look really good. I'm also planting some oak leaf. They seem to be growing well, but not very tall. And the last kind is this outrageous red. It is a very nice red lettuce. What I heard is that red lettuce is better for the fall because of the red color. They are better at catching the wavelength of the sun that we have closer in fall, because the wavelength change because of the inclination of the earth and having more sun rays being blocked by the atmosphere. So hopefully I'll test that out, see if they grow better in the fall. I already have some in the garden, but I haven't picked any yet, so I can tell you later what they taste like. So the first thing to do when you're planting seeds is to look behind at what it says and see what the planting depth is. You don't want to plant them too deep or the seed won't have enough energy to grow through the soil. And if you plant it in, too shallow, it will not resist too as much. The roots will be too much on the surface and the plant won't hold as much. It's not too bad for starting seeds in a tray because you're going to plant them in the soil later on, but still I try to follow those. That also tell you how long it takes to see the sprout, so that's pretty good to know, because otherwise you might get worried that nothing's growing, but yeah, it takes time. Anyway, let's get started. I already have started my trays. They're completely moist. So I watered from the top and I also watered underneath, so the soil should be fully soaked right now. I'll be using this little tool there to create space, to create holes and put the seeds in. Honestly, I doubt you want to watch me do the whole thing, so I'll just show you the completed result. So one thing I'd like to mention is what I put in those trays. What I use is seed starting soil. This is a special mix of soil that is meant to hold moisture a lot more, because seeds usually need more humid environment to start sprouting. Think of it as replicating the conditions that you have in the spring. Spring is very moist, the soil is soggy and all of that. That's what we are wanting to do with seeds, because that's what your seeds expect in the spring and that's when they sprout. So that's what you want to replicate. So that's why you're using potting soil that is retaining moisture a lot more, so you'll have sphagnum moss in there, or coconut fiber, something like that that holds in the moisture. You can always make your own mix if you get the separated ingredients, but honestly I just bought that. It was a lot easier. There you go, that's the first tray. I just put basically a pinch of seed in every cell, and hopefully that'll be enough that I'll get some nice growth out of it. I'm not sure how much sprouting rate to expect from those. So the good thing with lettuce is that they have tiny little seeds, so you can put a lot into whatever sprouts will sprout, and you get a higher rate of having something in every cell compared to if you put 1 or 2 seeds. So anyway, that's the first one. I'll be working on starting more seeds of my other kinds of lettuce, and then I'll start with the spinach. For that outrageous red and the oak leaf, the planting depth is 1/8 of an inch. So in that case, I'll probably just put it on top, try to push it a bit in the ground, and that's about it. I won't make a hole, otherwise it'll be too deep for it. So I'll show you very quickly how to do it. So I grabbed a handful of seeds, and I'll show you very quickly how it looks like once I put it in there. Here you can see some of the seeds are in there. They're really just on the surface, so I'll push them down a little bit, just to say they'll be in the soil. And that should be about it for those. So honestly, they don't need to be very deep. As long as they stay moist, they should be fine. I think I'll just cover it up with a bit more soil, just to say they're covered. And that should be good. So those were the outrageous red. I'll be doing the second half with the oak leaf, and then after that I'll start working on the spinach. So there you go, and now I'm going to do the spinach. They're 1/2 inch depth, so that's what I'm going to do. Just create little holes in each cell, and as you notice, I'm going as close to the center as possible, as to give as much space as possible for the plants, so that they have as much soil as possible on each side. And this, I hope, should give me enough spinach for the whole fall. We don't eat that much spinach anyway, but it'd be nice to have some. Worst case scenario, what you do is you blanch it, so you just cook it a little bit in water, and then you freeze it, and then you can have it for later recipes. So that's what I'm going to do with that one. And just to diversify, I'm doing 2 different kinds, as mentioned. So I'll start with the Avon hybrid. This is a good time to talk about what hybrid means. Hybrid means that it's a cross between 2 different plants. that's a bit different from plants that are considered like this one, heirloom. Heirloom is basically, it's been around for quite a while and it's been passed down through generations because it tastes good. And usually they tend to not cross-pollinate that much, so you always get something a bit consistent, whereas hybrids will most likely not produce the same thing if you reuse the seeds. So that's one good thing to know when you're choosing your plants, especially if you're planning on saving seeds. If you're not planning on saving seeds, then it doesn't really matter. As you can see, spinach produces bigger seeds than lettuce, so I'll plant about 2 or 3 per cell. I think I'll go with 2 this time, but I think those will sprout pretty well. The thing with spinach is that when you're planting it in the spring, you tend to get very bad results. Tends to go to seeds very quickly, so you don't get much of a harvest. What I'm hoping is that in the fall, because the temperatures are lower, it will not go to seed as quickly, and I'll get more harvest out of it. So that's what I'm hoping for. Really, spinach is a cold weather crop, so you can plant it later in the season and it will do great. And anyway, you're harvesting it for the leaves, so it's not like you have to wait for fruit to be ready. So that makes it a lot faster to harvest. Honestly, 50 days is a month and a half. So by the time these are ready, will be mid-September, something like that. And I'll still have the rest of the winter, the rest of the fall to continue harvesting from it until frost here happens along, like late October, early November most of the time. And that's one thing that's important. It depends where you live. That will change what you can plant. Here we're closer to Ottawa, so we get a weather that is a bit colder than what you'd expect, like if you live in the US, but we're still a lot warmer than certain regions of Canada, so that gives us a good amount of time in the fall to get harvest. So this one is the Avon hybrid. No, sorry, that's a Viking. It comes in a tape, so it's going to be a bit more complicated starting it in cells like that. I'll just rip it apart and plant it. So honestly, I'm not a big fan of tapes like that. I don't find they work well. I don't know. If you've had different experience than me, let me know. But honestly, all my attempts with tapes have been really bad. So I only bought it because the kind looked good and they had no other option than tape. So hopefully this will grow properly. It's just more work. But yeah, as you can see, I'm just planting it. So I won't film the whole thing because otherwise that would be very boring. And so I'll show you the final result. So there you go, all the seeds are in. I'll just cover all that with soil to close the holes and let them grow in properly. Hopefully that will grow well. I'll be doing a follow-up video to that one once the plants are ready and I'm ready to transplant them in the garden. So if you're interested in watching it and you want to make sure not to miss it, well, make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon. That will allow you to keep track of when I release this video. So anyway, I'm almost done with that. Now, okay. So now that everything is planted, all I need to do is put that plastic cover on top to keep it moist, and I'll bring all my trays indoor because it's way too warm outside for them to sprout properly. And once they're starting to sprout, I'll remove the dome to let them breathe. And once they're big enough, I'm going to plant them in the garden. Like I said, I'll do a follow-up video when I'm ready to transplant them, so make sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you get notification when I release videos. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to share, like, and subscribe. And let me know in the comments what you think of those videos and if there's any topic you'd like me to talk about. So in the meantime, take care, guys. See you next time. Ciao.